greatest work known to man.
Mm-hmm.
I say, like, I want to say creation.
Boom. There we go,
I
Nate.
want to say creation.
There we go. There we go. And it's like,
For
even
real.
if you don't come from a biblical worldview, and if you want to argue evolution, this is what I say work is. I say work is defined as an activity involving mental or physical effort in order to achieve a purpose or result. Despite one's worldview, evolution, and creation, the universe accomplished a purpose. So even if you don't want to say the universe came into existence by God, and you want to argue that millions and billions of years produced the universe,
Yeah.
but that's the purpose, the universe. So it took all this time to produce something. That's work. Whatever you want to call it, it's still work. You know, and I just give this example. I say, because we don't stop to think about certain things. I say this. I say the Earth's weight is so massive that it's written as an equation, which is 6 times 10 to the 24th power.
Right.
Like, I don't even know what, you can't even describe that number. But it's like,
just about that.
and that's just the Earth, and we know there's other planets and stars that are much bigger than the Earth.
Yeah.
And it's like, that joint just suspends in midair.
Right.
You know,
It's
like,
a vacuum of space, and you just like.
you just look at that and you're just like, wait, so I can say somebody who created this smartphone, that someone created it, but I look at the universe, which is far more complex than a smartphone, and say, ain't nobody created that.
It just came.
It just came. You know, and it just be blowing my mind where it's like, how can you look at the greatest work known to man, creation,
Right.
and just say nobody had any hand in that? There was no intelligence behind that.
Yeah.
Because I say what the core belief of evolution is that the universe was formed apart from an intelligent designer. This is akin to looking at the complexity and intricacies of a computer and concluding that no one worked to build it. It's preposterous
Sounds
because
silly.
the universe is more complex and intricate than a computer, yet the conclusion is that no one created it. I don't know if you had something that you wanted to say.
I just said it sounds silly. It's just like, yeah, this computer just appeared on my table here, and like, hey, whatever happened, whatever type of magic happened here to make that happen, thank you, magic. You were doing so good.
Yeah, it's like we consciously know. We don't have to see, I don't know who created the smartphone, but we know
Right.
they exist. But yet we look at creation, it's just like, nah, science. You know, but we attribute personhood to, you know, something impersonal. You know,
Right.
it's like, wait, how did this happen apart from an intelligent being creating this? And so what we run into is we have these people who will appeal to science. And as me and Nate, we hold to the Bible and a biblical worldview, but we also want to be critical.
Right, yeah.
When someone comes up to us and they'll say, so you really believe creation happened in 6 literal days? So my brother Nate, how do you respond to someone who says that? Because it's like, man, you know, what do we do when someone comes up to us and challenges us on, you know, the first chapter of the book that we hold to be so dear and true? I'm just curious, how do you respond to that?
Honestly, man, I picked their brain. Like, it's like, okay, cool. So I studied science a little bit. I studied math a little bit in college. So I'm just like, well, what initiated the Big Bang? And it's like, well, it just kind of happened. It kind of happened. Cool. So nothing initiated. What was before the Big Bang? Nothing. How was nothing before the Big Bang? And when it was initiated in some way, there had to be something that happened. Well, we're not quite sure today. All right, cool. So the way you're not quite sure, like, I am absolutely sure that this is the truth. That my God, because there's a list of things that he did straight up. It explains what he did, like step by step, day by day. So I've got my evidence, and it's written right here. But, you know, did it start with a Big Bang? Well, what happened before it? What caused it? I don't know. Well, I do.
Yeah.
And that's just like, well, and if somebody comes at me sideways, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, okay, cool. But if somebody's like coming like, well, how do you believe that? I'm like, you know, it's just, it's my belief. It's what I read, and I believe it, and it makes sense to me. Like, even, this is how I think of it, man. God knows us. He's our Father. He's our Creator. He knows our minds. He created our minds. He knows that we're curious. He knows that we're human beings. He gave us something to study, man. It's like, okay, you guys go back with radioactive decay and figure out everything that's going on. Cool. at the end of the day, after we do all of our research, we're probably going to figure out that God is real. So that's usually how I.
Nah, that's dope. That's dope, man. Because I think a lot of people they don't think critically. Because even if you want to argue a Big Bang, you got to say something came before. Whatever happened, it had to be eternal. Because you're just gonna keep asking, what created that? What created that? What created that?
What came first, the chicken or the egg?
There you go. You're always gonna keep asking that question. So whatever the answer is, it's just got to be something eternal, and we already know that to be who God. It has to be something eternal to initiate anything to happen. And so I offer two responses to someone who is critical, because I want to make sure that the thing that I can't stand the critics of Christianity, and I think we have to take responsibility, is that we're not logical, we're not rational, we just believe just because we believe, as if there's no logic or rationale to why we believe what we believe. So my first response would be this. I say, when we look at history, Nate, tell me about your childhood.
What you mean, bro?
Just tell like history. When we look at history, tell me about your childhood.
Grew up working like all the time, day after day, just like that's what it was. Work. As I got older, I took it upon myself to continue working, and I grew up with my mother and father there with me. And they pretty much took care of me when they did, and my brother did.
Now, did you appeal to science?
Yeah.
No. And when you were retelling me about your childhood,
I didn't.
You didn't. What did you appeal to? You appealed to your own experience.
Right.
So how do we determine history? We determine history by what? Eyewitness.
Right.
And what written record.
True.
But however, when it comes to the history and the formation of the universe, we appeal to science. But the question is, the only way, because science is repeatable, observable, and you can observe it. You can't observe the formation of the universe.
Right.
So how can you definitively say this is how it came to be? The only person who can speak on it is the person who was there. Like we talk about slavery. How do we know slavery happened? How do we know all these other things happened? Eyewitness account and written record.
Exactly.
We don't appeal to science when it comes to history. And it's like so many people do that and they don't even get checked on it. Wow, it's like, how does history, how do you, like all your textbooks, how do you learn anything about history? Eyewitness account or written record. That's the only way you do, and that's why I asked you about, and I know it was kind of threw you off. I was like, what? It kind of threw you off, but only you can speak on it.
True.
Or people who observed you when you was growing up. I can ask your parents. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there.
That's true.
So I can't speak on your history.
That's real.
So it's like we speaking on history, but you wasn't even there. So there's billions and billions of years that happened with no one present.
Right.
Like how we really know what happened? Nobody was there. You know, and it's
wow.
We don't even think about it like that.
Right, yeah.
That's how you determine history. How you, like the first president, George Washington, how you know that? Did you see him?
No,
what? A written record.
That's
and an eyewitness account. So what? Like he said, how do we know how the world came to be? We got a written record. This is one. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now people can say, no, it ain't. And again, appeal to science, but it's like science, you don't use science to determine history.
You don't.
Yeah. You don't. You don't. You use an eyewitness account or a written record. That's how you determine history. And then the second objection that I would have, and I think you were kind of hinting at it, that we can trust God's word. So essentially, if we throw God out the window, and because science doesn't tell us anything. It's people who interpret science that tell us.
Exactly.
So they could be wrong. So you put all your faith in someone who is not infallible, who could be wrong.
Exactly.
They could be wrong.
And it's theory, man.
It's theory.
It's theory. Is it fact? It's theory. That's what I've known it to be. Like,
and that's dope. So it's like I'm appealing to what? That the only person who could speak on creation is the one who was there. I wasn't there. You wasn't there.
Nah.
Who was there? God. So he the only one who could speak on it.
Right.
He did speak on it. And then number two is I can trust who God is because God is perfect. He has demonstrated himself to be trustworthy. He has demonstrated himself to be faithful. So therefore I can trust what he says. And so going back how we tie work into this, because I say work gives an identity. And let me see where I picked up at. This is what happens. So somebody will be like, how you believe in, a 6-day creation and God doing all of this? And it's like, what? Only an eyewitness can determine history, God. And then I can trust God because he has demonstrated himself to be faithful. And how does he do that? We see that in the first 3 chapters of Genesis. That's like, I say this all the time. If we can get those first 3 chapters, we golden, because there's so much meat in those first 3 chapters. Because what happens? God creates everything and he says what is good.
Right.
It's good. And then he says this. He says, there's no one to work the land. And I don't know if we catch this, because work is always a good thing.
Yeah.
You see, we view work as a bad thing.
Yeah.
We view work as a bad thing, but work is a good thing because work preceded the fall. Work preceded the fall, so it was always a good thing that work, what happened? Because so he says there's no one to work the land. And so what? We see work is a purpose. We have a purpose, what? To work the land. That we given what? Dominion, to be fruitful, to multiply, to subdue the earth. That's our job. Right. He gave us a job to do. So what? It gives us a purpose. Right. And not only does it give us a purpose, it gives us an identity too. Because what? Who works the land? Man. Period. What is man? We made in the image of God. That's our identification. What? Image bearers of God. That we are to reflect God. Well, God is sovereign. He's given us sovereignty over the earth, and we what? Take care of it. And we are to do what? Work unto the Lord. Right. That's who we are to work unto. But when because of sin, that's been reversed. We don't work unto the Lord anymore. Who do we work unto? That paycheck.
Ourselves. Yeah,
we're trying to ourselves.
Trying to get that
money.
You know,
and I say this. I say, when men work into themselves, they only hold themselves accountable for the things they do in public. Men generally don't hold themselves accountable to the things they say or do in private. However, everything that requires physical or mental effort accomplishes a purpose, is work. Essentially, everything we do, is work, and everything will be evaluated. Because, like I said, God has given us work. Right. That's what we're supposed to do. And so, when we work, and we're not working unto ourselves, or we're not working unto the Lord, we're working unto ourselves. It's like when it comes time for evaluation, we gonna get evaluated just for our work and the things that we do. Right. But what God gonna even evaluate for the things that we do privately. And let me see. I think I have some. I say this. I just wanted to ask this question to you. I said, has there ever been times when you've been guilty of working unto yourself?
All the time. All the time, man. Whenever you're talking about marriage and that selfishness, it's like whenever you're expecting something to come back to you, and you're not thinking about anybody but yourself, or not even thinking about like God in what you're doing, then you're working for yourself. Yeah, every time. Example, like trying to make sure something's on the table when you get home. Like, hey, baby, why ain't you made no dinner? I'm hungry. It's like, oh, that's selfish, man. I'm worrying about myself instead of worrying about how her day was.